after attending the Roswell UFO Festival, John Steiger became inspired by the idea of a jury trial drama. So he produced the UFO trilogy. It's a rendering of 3 of the leading UFO cases of all time: Roswell in 1947, Rendlesham Forest in 1980, and the Brooklyn Bridge alien abduction in 1989. And John's joining us now. Hi, John.
Good morning.
John, the play's really interesting idea. I'm surprised it hasn't been done before, but what prompted you to produce them?
Well, what happened is I attended the Roswell UFO Festival in 2015, and I drove out there from the East Coast, which is about a 4-day drive. And on the way, and then I attended the festival, and on the way home, as I was driving, you know, it's a great cross-country distance here. The idea came to me that it'd be interesting to stack up the pro-Roswell evidence and pro-Roswell side of the case versus the Air Force's and skeptics' anti-Roswell and anti-UFO side of the case. And I thought that the 2 things, that number one, a courtroom would be an interesting vehicle to do it, because that's a natural place where people present both sides of an argument. And secondly, use of the theatrical stage would be a good place for the witnesses to present their testimony, and also have some photographic evidence if it's possible. I don't demand that in the play, but it would be nice if that could be supplemented. But this doesn't require one having to go out, you know, to the fields where the crash sites were, or having the vehicles from that time, and it tries to keep the costs from becoming prohibitive. Okay,
so they're plays. So in that respect, are the outcomes in each of the play, the outcome of the trial predetermined, or are they kind of determined as the play, you know, runs?
Well, in the Roswell case, there's no predetermined outcome. What happens is the jury, the audience of the play becomes the jury for the trial. When you get your playbill, you are also given a juror ballot, which you are asked to mark at the end of the play, when all the evidence is in and the closing arguments have been made by each side's counsel. And then those ballots are turned into the usher. You were briefly taken out of the theater. You're brought back in to allow for enough time to count the ballots. And then the actors come out and get their accolades. And then the judge will announce the verdict. Now, the verdict is not one of unanimity. It is a verdict of majority, because otherwise it would be a hung jury every time. You're never, it'd be hard to believe that it's going to be all for either side, right, all or nothing. So, and also it's a lot more people, one would hope, would be attending the traditional number of 12. So anyway, it's a majority rule in this case, and the judge will announce the verdict. But I thought it was a neat kind of concept to have the audience, from an audience participation standpoint, to allow them to be the jury and to see how their feelings are to measures up with those of the rest of the people in the audience.
Yeah, so we're likely to get possibly a different outcome every time the play is presented.
There's basically 3 possible outcomes. There's either the pro-UFO plaintiff side wins, or the anti-UFO defendant Air Force wins, or there's the unlikely event that there could be a hung jury in case of a tie. But that would be I would think fairly rare. You'd have to have
Yeah.
you know, an even number of ballots and both sides exactly the same. But that would be a hung jury.
Yeah, really interesting. I'm just kind of thinking. I mean, the crowd, the audience is more than likely going to be pro UFO, which could lean the judgment in the end towards towards a verdict in favour of, say Roswell actually happening and Rendlesham Forest. I mean, is that something you thought about?
Well, Rendlesham Forest doesn't have a jury. That play. That's a board of inquiry.
Oh, okay.
It's not a determined outcome at the end. There's some differentiation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Roswell case is, I mean, look, both sides. I think I did an objective job of presenting. I presented only firsthand testimony of witnesses. There's only 10 witnesses on the pro UFO side. There's a lot more than that. I mean, but you're also, this is to take course in one evening's or one afternoon's entertainment. It is not the entirety of the Roswell case, which could take, weeks.
Yep.
So anyway, so we've distilled it down some. And that's what also makes this book very interesting, because it encapsulates Roswell and Rendlesham Forest and the Brooklyn Bridge case in a nutshell. So you can find out all the basic information about what each of these paramount cases are about. And there's also a bibliography in each of the plays at the end of them to provide for further reading. And I highly recommend you check out more of those sources if you are so inclined.
Okay. Did you add any fiction to each of the presentations with the real life?
Fictionalized characters, okay, in Roswell, the fictionalized characters would be the courtroom personnel. That's it. All the witnesses and all the evidence presented is based on the fact of the pro UFO sides or the facts developed by the anti-UFO side of the Air Force. The Air Force put out 2 reports in the 1990s, and their side is largely based on those 2 reports. Now, do we want to continue on with Rendlesham about that same question?
Sure. Sure. Yep.
Okay. The Rendlesham Forest, again, there's a ton of evidence that's available on Rendlesham Forest. I have the bibliography in the play leads to most all of that. I was very thorough in my research. However, you can only present so much in the course of one evening or one afternoon's entertainment. And they are meant to be entertaining. So anyway, with the Rendlesham Forest play, I presented 3 witnesses. The main 3 witnesses, there was Jim Peniston and John Burroughs, who were first night. John Burroughs was also out in the 3rd night, and Colonel Holt was the main player on the 3rd night. And so the first act is Peniston, the second act is Burroughs, because he was 1st and 3rd, and then the last act is Colonel Holt on the 3rd night. Now the 2nd night is not as developed, and there's no act covering the 2nd act. There's no act covering the 2nd night's activities.
Right.
Because they're just simply the main witnesses. There were really only 2 of them, we believe, but neither one has come forward and given a full explanation of what happened. There's surmisals and some knowledge of it, but I didn't feel comfortable that there's a sufficient amount to include an act on that in the play.
Are you going to send an invite to say Jim Peniston and Burroughs, when the play?
I offered beforehand for both of them to look at the play, that they had the opportunity to do that. I think I heard from one of them. I think it was Burroughs, and that he had the play and he said he was going to look it over, but I don't think I heard back from him after that. I don't know that I heard from Peniston. I have interviewed Colonel Halt on a couple occasions, but that wasn't really for factual development. He wrote a very comprehensive book of the whole. I think it's the whole perspective, and it's to be honest, it's I feel the greatest UFO book for photography that I've ever seen.
Right.
Now, there's some others for text that I like too, but for photography and particularly for Rendlesham Forest, his book and Mr. John Hanson's, it's a wonderful book. So anyway, but I don't have a military background. And so Colonel Halt was very helpful in assisting me with military terminology. And for instance, at one point he went back to when he was going to go out, but before he was at a party, he was notified that the UFO had returned. He had to go back to his home to get out of party attire and change into appropriate clothing. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that term was field gear. And that's all you have to say. The colonel said, just say, yeah, I changed into field gear, because that wasn't, I don't recall that was in any of the sources. Yeah. Because it's a simple, military technology, a term. And anyway, that's just an example of how he helped me out with this play.
Right, right. Well, Roswell and Rendlesham Forest are, like icons in ufology folklore, but I guess a lot of people won't be all that familiar with the Brooklyn Bridge alien abduction, basically because it hasn't had the same fanfare as the other two.
No, I suppose that's not. I would like. Could we just go back to Rendlesham Forest, because there is one aspect of the play that I'd like to include before I forget to mention it. Roswell had the interesting concept to me of the audience acting as the jury. Rendlesham Forest has the interesting concept of there's a board of inquiry, and it is the chair or chairman, take your pick, has lines and basically conducts the board of inquiry throughout all three acts. Again, the chair is a fictional character, as is the counsel to the board, who questions the witnesses and questions the skeptics. The witnesses and the skeptics are all real people, as are the witnesses' advocates, such as Nick Pope and John Hanson for Colonel Halt. Mm-hmm. Now, because a board of inquiry is more than one person, but there's no lines for those people, I said, well, where are we going to get people to be on the board? Who would want to sit up there and as actors or whatever, and just sit there and do nothing? Well, I said, wow, you could, the possibility exists, you could have audience members sit on the actual stage and witness the proceedings from up on stage. Now, where do you see this? It's very rare if it ever happens. Can you pardon me for 1 second?
Sure.
I need to take one break.
Yep.
Apologize for that interruption. What it is that the board of inquiry is made up of a chair who is an actor in the play, and also audience members. You can have 2 to 4 audience members. I would feel that you'd have an odd number on either side of the chair for symmetry, but I suppose whatever the director wants would be okay. But they would sit up there. They could take notes, but they would simply observe the play from up on stage. And I just thought that was an interesting aspect to the Rendlesham Forest play.
Certainly is, and also a probably an incentive too for people to come and see the play if they feel like they may get a chance to sit up there on the stage.
Oh, exactly. I would think those would be premium seats.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So the Brooklyn Bridge, as we mentioned before, probably not as well known as Roswell and Rendlesham. So perhaps we can kind of enlighten the audience a little bit about the Brooklyn Bridge alien abduction incident.
Well, the Brooklyn Bridge alien abduction incident took place initially on November 30th, 1989. It took place in Manhattan, but the Brooklyn, it's called the Brooklyn Bridge because the bridge connects Manhattan to Brooklyn. And the abduction took place right outside from a apartment building, right very close to the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, a woman named Linda Cortile said that she was taken from her apartment and floated from her bed through a closed window and up. This was accompanied by 3 aliens, and up into a spaceship which was hovering above her apartment building at approximately 3:30 in the morning. Down on the street below, in a stalled vehicle, because that's the effect that UFOs often have on terrestrial machinery. This is, I'm going to say allegedly here, the United Nations Secretary General, who is arguably the highest position of anyone on Earth, witnessed that abductions, saw Linda being taken by the aliens into the spaceship, along with his 2 bodyguards were also present. At the same time, the Secretary General himself, and his name is Javier Perez de Cuellar, and the 2 bodyguards were also abducted at the same time, and taken for, I think it was for approximately 45 minutes, is the story. Now, that's a lot to believe. And it's somewhat hard to swallow even for me. Bud Hopkins was the original investigator of this case. I think he did a magnificent job in his book Witness, which was written, I believe, and published in 1996. Now, it is the main book on this abduction. And the reason I took this case is because it had involved the UN Secretary General and is of international import. Anyway, Bud did this tremendous job in Witness. And so, but I decided, because I've also read, there's a lot of skeptical writings on this case. And there is some persuasiveness to the skeptical writings in this case. More so, I'm more persuaded by the skeptical evidence in this case than I am of Roswell or Rendlesham Forest, for instance. So therefore, I use this case as a vehicle to present what I consider the most important concept that I've been able to present. And for that reason, I believe this is the most important of the 3 plays that I have written here.
Right.
And that has to do with the main title, which is Will to Believe. Will to believe is the heart of the UFO question. The concept that in order to accept the possibility of UFOs as a prerequisite, you have to have the will to believe. You don't have to believe in UFOs. You don't have to ever believe in UFOs, but you have to be open enough to the possibility of having the will to believe. Otherwise, your mind, if you do not have the will to believe, then you are closed-minded to the possibility of UFOs. And I maintain if you are closed-minded to that, then you are closed-minded potentially to truth, because you cannot accept what could be true.
Right, right. There's a term that's used called the mental boggle point, and it basically all it is that when people are presented with something that stretches their version of the truth, it's like an elastic band. They ping back to what they see as normal, and that'll be really interesting watching a case like that, because you know, just fascinating to see which way the jury would sway on that.
Well, yes, there's not a jury, but there is. I feel like I've presented this. My strongest writing is in this, and strongest theatrical presentation, and that is because it essentially boils down to four main characters. There's Linda Cortile, the abductee, alleged abductee. There's Bud Hopkins, the investigator. There is a character, and this is a fictional name, Carla Roberts, who photographs the hypnotic regressions. There's two hypnotic regressions of Linda in the first act, basically covering her experience. And these are taken from factual events. She was hypnotically regressed at least twice by Bud Hopkins. And then the Secretary General of the United Nations pops up every now and again, kind of to make commentary. Now, he officially denies that he was abducted. Mm-hmm. That's his official position. But on the other hand, Bud Hopkins has a letter on UN stationery signed by Javier Perez de Cuellar. And the signature looks authentic. And it's in the style of another letter, which is authenticated from Javier Perez de Cuellar to someone else, same type stationery, and in which he tells Bud Hopkins that it's actually true that I was abducted, but I have to officially deny it, and I hope you can understand that.
Right, right, really
so
interesting.
You see, there's all kinds of contradictions mm-hmm. in this case. There's contradictions from Linda's evidence. There's contradictions from what Carla points out, as because she did some investigating herself. And anyway, the second act then becomes this emotional debate. First, Carla versus Bud, and they've been longtime cohorts and co-workers. Then Carla and Linda, and there's no love lost between the two of them. I mean, there's some real emotional arguments.
Yep.
And these would be just fantastic roles for actresses, I believe.
Yeah.
Either one, Linda or Carla. You should, if you're an actress or know of an actress who is looking for a good role, those are the two that they should check out in this drama. And then the UN Secretary General, and there's some, there's the alien characters, and then Linda's son is also shown as, and he was allegedly abducted. He was a 9 or 10-year-old boy who was abducted, and that's shown in the second act, and Linda's reaction to that, and Carla's contrary position to that.
Okay. Well, you mentioned actors and actresses. Have you auditioned actors and actresses for these roles yet?
No, I haven't. I'm not producing the plays personally. I had some a background in filmmaking. I directed 2 movies some years ago, but I've stopped and I'm refraining from that. I'm more interested in UFO research and writing now. So right now we have options out in Norway and in Germany for 2 theatrical companies who are interested in presenting all of the plays in those countries. Other than those countries, we don't have any acting companies or individuals who are, under contract to stage the plays. So we would certainly welcome that from any of the other nations.
Okay. Sounds like a great project, John. I was reading an article in the Daily Star, and I'm not sure whether they were making light of the whole situation, but they were basically wondering whether you were actually looking for real aliens to play some of the parts.
What happened is that they sent out a questionnaire saying, we've heard about your play and we'd be interested possibly in writing an article. Can you please provide answers to questions? So I provided some answers to the questions. Well, then they set out a second set and they got really a bit strange on me, but I played along, because it's in good fun. But no, the Daily Star article is, it's just entertaining. It's not, they are not taking the subject seriously. And in a way, it's kind of old-fashioned because at least over here, UFOs are being taken more seriously than they were in the past. Mm-hmm. And I would think that that's the case elsewhere. But the Daily Star has its own way of going about things. And, my publisher's Philip Mantle, who's a well-known ufologist over in England, and he advised me to play along with it. So I did that. And so he's pleased with the results. So I'm not going to object to it.
I think it's good publicity.
Thank you.
John, were you hoping, you've taken an interest in UFOs in recent years. Were you hoping that people coming to these presentations that aren't UFO believers will actually become converts?
I wouldn't exactly say that. What I am hoping to is to present the most, I think Roswell and Rendlesham Forest are probably the 2 most important cases, at least the 2 most publicized cases. And Brooklyn Bridge is an important case too because of the involvement of the Secretary General of the United Nations. I mean, if the Secretary General of the United Nations came out and admitted to have been abducted by aliens, that would be just an absolute bombshell of a story. Mm-hmm. So anyway, what I am trying to present is for the people who have interest in these cases, but maybe don't know that much about UFOs really, and want to learn more. This is an opportunity to dip your toe into the water and see if you like it or not. These are, they're introductions. They're certainly not the be all and the end all. There's great books written on Rendlesham Forest in complete depth. There's books on Roswell and witnessed on the Brooklyn Bridge case is another one. So anyway, but as far as introductions, either to attend the performance or to read the plays, they're very quick reads. You can read a play in a night easily. So you can be done with the book in like 3 days. And I feel be quite enriched. You will if you don't know much about UFOs, you will know a lot more having read these 3 plays.
Right. John, of course, as major UFO incidents that are basically gone unsolved, suppression was at the heart of each of these, and those people wishing that that people didn't know the truth. Are you worried about any pushback from those people who, behind the scenes, that you know, don't wish these events to be discussed?
I'm actually not. I've discussed that with Colonel Holt. If anyone would get pushback, you would think that Colonel Holt would have, but he denies that the military clamped down on him or told him not to discuss Rendlesham Forest. And if they didn't tell Colonel Holt that you mustn't discuss this. Now that I'm talking about after the fact, I'm not talking about when he was in the military itself. When he was in the military, yes, there were things that he couldn't discuss and whatnot. But as a civilian, which I am also, no, I'm not that worried about it. And it hasn't happened to date.
Okay. I know Jim Penniston, who will be joining us at some stage on this program. He's bringing out a new book with new evidence on Rendlesham, so that'll be interesting to take a look at. Is that something that you became aware of as well?
I think Jim Penniston's book on Rendlesham Forest is the best written text that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it came out after I had written my play.
Right.
Now, I will say this. I may have altered some things on the third night, but this is because of what Monroe Nevels, who was one of the people in Colonel Holt's patrol, wrote in Penniston's book. Now, Monroe Nevels this happened in December of 1980. To my knowledge, Monroe Nevels wrote to Penniston and put put in writing his experience as of 2017. That's 37 years after the event. Okay, then it took another 2 years and I'm not complaining. I think that's a sensible, reasonable time for Penniston's book to become published. So now we're 39 years. So, and the other thing is that some of the things that Nevels writes about are uncorroborated by anyone else. So you have to take that with a bit of a grain of salt too. So I'm not too upset about it. Yeah. But Penniston's book is it's a great book. I wrote a review under another name because I didn't. Well, that's just how I do things. And highly recommended it on Amazon. And anyway, but then the second volume is about the binary code. Now, the binary code is a very important concept to Jim Penniston and Gary Osborne. It's also a controversial concept. I'm not sure. Well, I know the binary code is minimized in my play, and I think you can minimize it and have Rendlesham Forest be a great event without reference to the binary code. On the other hand, I have problems. I have personal problems with the translation of the binary code. You have to understand, the binary code comes from Jim Penniston a day or two after his extraordinary experience with the landed craft and him touching the symbol that provided the download of the information
Mm-hmm.
And it was zeros and ones were transmitted into his brain from the craft. He wrote those down, and it's a small notebook, but it's zeros and ones, like 00011110001, etc., going on for 15 pages. There are just an extraordinary amount of symbols, but all zeros and ones. Now, that has been translated by one Joe Luciano, is the name of the person, and I don't know a whole lot about Joe Luciano, but that is who Peniston and Osborne have relied on so far, unless they come out with more in this second book, as to there being an interaction of time travelers with us in you know, the year 20th and 21st centuries, and they're from 8100. I'm not even sure what century that is at the moment, but anyway, it's far, far in the future. And not only is it from 8100, but there's a series of land coordinates all over the globe. Now, this is taken from a long series of zeros and ones. How you get from a long series of zeros and ones to land coordinates all over the globe and a message for humanity from the year 8100 is a bit of a stretch for me, to be quite honest. But I also have, there's been some other things in UFOs though, that and paranormal, that I didn't at first believe and then have come to accept as credible. So my mind is open on that.
Yeah.
I have the will to believe in the binary code.
Okay, that's good. John, if these plays are a success, have you got others on the drawing board?
I have no others on the drawing board. I have no plans at this time. There could be, I mean, these are three of the top cases, arguably, but there are many other cases deserving of theatrical treatment, probably, and it could be dramatized. But I will probably let all that to others.
Yeah.
I'm doing a different project right now about, are you familiar with a radio broadcaster here in the States named Art Bell?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
He's a legend.
Right, he is. And he's quite a notable interviewer and on UFO and paranormal topics. Anyway, I'm researching now his not for a biography, but his radio programs, the programs themselves, and I've come to there being there's over 1,900 of them. The vast majority of these 1,900 focused on UFOs and the paranormal, and I understand it's historical, but I think there's a lot of there's a wealth of information there that needs to be preserved, and that's what I'm looking to do to help preserve that.
Fantastic. This is probably my last question, John, but it's probably going to be a bit of a mischievous one. It's I'll explain. Back in February, I put on a 3-day online summit, kind of revolving around disclosure as being the main topic, and interviewed 30 experts on the subject of UFOs and aliens. And the one concern I had, and it created a bit of anxiety leading up to the actual summit date, was disclosure. I'm thinking, what happens if disclosure happens? I mean, this is going to be all for nothing. I'll have to call it off. Is if disclosure happened tomorrow, would that annoy you?
No, I would welcome it.
Okay.
I would relish it. But I wish I had the will to believe in government coming forth with disclosure, but I'm not there yet on that. I do not have the will to believe at the moment that government will willingly come forward with disclosure. And this is not just the US government, this is any government really that is in the know with you know, that matters, okay? But that doesn't mean that, you know, accidents happen or somehow their hand could be forced, which I wouldn't be against that either, to be quite honest. I mean, we need to stay within the bounds of the law. I'm not, you know, suggesting criminality here, but anyway, so I would definitely welcome disclosure if we can get it to happen somehow.
John, fascinating discussion, and I really do wish you well with the trilogy. So it's available, and it's available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon. It's both, there's a large paperback version if you want a tangible copy of the book, or you can get it in ebook format.
Okay, so on Kindle.
On Kindle, or it might be download. I don't do the ebooks so much, but it might be available in other than Kindle. But I just know there's an ebook available.
Fantastic, John. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll watch this with interest. Stay in touch.
Thank you very much for having me. I do appreciate it.
John Steiger joining us.